The climate strike. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian Heise here and welcome to another episode of Heise Says. I hope you're having a relaxing day. Let's talk about the climate strike that happened around the world on Friday, where people were striking all around Australia. Now, I'm old enough to remember back in the 80s when there was all this fear about global warming, all the dolphins were dying, we're going to run out of food. Heard it all before. One of my earlier memories as a child is asking my mother to buy a particular brand of dishwashing liquid because it would save the dolphins. It would save the dolphins. I was worried about that. I was only like 6 or 7 at the time. And I thought by buying this particular brand, it would save them. It showed you how effective marketing was and how insidious these things are on children. Now, from my perspective, I am actually very concerned with the climate strike action, because you have a large group of people that are politically motivated, that are frankly fearful for the end of the world. They are acting like a zealot religious cult that believes an end-time prophecy is coming to a head if they don't take drastic, radical action. And it's not just children, it's often their parents. So before we jump into that article, let's have a look here on Instagram. I just did climate strike hashtag 343,000 posts, and we'll have a look. I mean, okay, you got some younger girls here and a lot of adults, and you'll find more and more adults as well in support of the children. So have a look here. Rachel was saying that a lot of parents were saying how proud they were of their children. I even saw it on LinkedIn where businesses were proud of this, what was happening here. So it was just a mix. Now, my concern is that these people are getting political power, political capacity, and they're going to act irrationally. They're going to act irrationally. There's no basis to what they believe. Some of them believe the world will end in 12 years. And they're calling for radical changes. They're calling for socialism. They're calling to destroy our economy to save the planet. What wouldn't I give up? There's no price too high. We have to make change. The world is going to end. We're all going to die. That's not a rational person speaking. That's an emotional response brought upon by fear and anxiety. And we'll look at that in an article, because this is what's happening to a lot of these kids. You know, kids shouldn't be worrying about this type of thing. And it's the job of adults to calm them down and set them straight that these issues are not going to make any difference. We'll be fine. So students and their supporters, notice that, supporters, have turned out across the world, including Australia, to demand governments act against climate change ahead of a UN summit. So they're expecting governments to come to the rescue. If anyone could solve any issues with regards to the climate, it's not going to be the government. The government buggers everything up they touch. They should be protesting to Elon Musk. He'll find a solution, or some entrepreneurs. So masses of children skipped school Friday to join a global strike against climate change that teen activist Greta Thunberg hopes will mark a turning point in persuading leaders to act against environmental disaster. Some 4 million people filled city streets around the world, organizers said, in what was expected to be the biggest ever protest against the threat posed to the planet by rising temperatures. Okay, against the perceived threat. I hope this will be another social tipping point that we show how many people are engaged, how many people are putting pressure on leaders, the 16-year-old told AFP in New York, where she claimed 250,000 protested. Okay, this young lady has a messiah complex. Although there was no official turnout, organizers at 350.org wrote on Twitter that 4 million people participated worldwide. The group says Friday's rallies were the start of 5,800 protests across 163 countries over the next week. The global climate strike kicked off in the Pacific Islands, some of the nations most threatened by rising sea levels. Okay, that's been disproven. That has been disproven. The sea levels are not rising. Okay, here's the thing. When these Pacific Islands, when you see pictures of all of the houses being inundated by the water, it's got more to do with a lack of technical capacity in where to build. They'll just build right next to the bloody water. They won't build slightly higher. So when you get, rains or monsoonal weather or a hurricane, they get flooded away because they're stupid. Okay, that's why. It's not climate change. Some of these islands have actually grown since the 70s. They've gotten bigger. And I've done a video on it in the past, and I'll do another one again on it, just because this fallacy keeps coming up. Okay, guys, sea levels haven't risen. Okay, Noosa Beach, still there. The old, you look at the photos of 100 years ago, the fort, Sydney Harbour, exactly the same. Exactly the same. So we don't need to worry about that one. Social media posts showed scores of demonstrations ranging from a few dozen primary school in Abuja, Nigeria, to tens of thousands of people in cities from Hamburg in Germany to Melbourne in Australia. Greta said in a tweet that huge crowds in Sydney would set the standard for strikes and protests planned in about 150 countries. Our future on your shoulders, read one banner stretched across the street by students in Berlin. Our oceans are rising, so are we, was a popular slogan on placards, including one carried by a student in school uniform in Melbourne and another by a girl wearing a face mask in East India. Protesters are calling on governments to take immediate action to limit the harmful effects of man-made climate change. Okay. People need to be very careful with this, because this is getting traction. This is getting media exposure. This is the accepted narrative in business as well. Businesses are kowtowing to this. This is very dangerous. This leads down a socialist path. This is people calling for more government control, more loss of liberties. We're having a cash ban restriction put here in Australia. How many people know about it? How many people have you spoken to that have any idea about that? That they could go to jail for spending their own money. I bet you everyone knows about this. Everyone knows about this. This is why it's dangerous. Because where's the counter-protest? Could you even organize a counter-protest? Would you get screamed and harassed out if you wanted to counter it? And how would you counter it? Because, a viewer sent me a message saying I have to talk about this, and most people think they're stupid. Maybe they do, but the problem is there's no cohesive voice against it. And this is growing. This is why now in Australia, Labor is dependent on green preferences. They need green preferences to win. They wouldn't get into Parliament if it wasn't for green preferences. Just keep that in your mind. And the problem is you're getting people who aren't even doing basic science at high school, thinking the world is going to end in 12 years' time and demanding more government control. And they don't realize they're signing away their freedoms one bit after another. Here in Australia, it will make absolutely no difference. And let's see, here's a quote from the chief scientist. Hang on, no, that's a different one. Here's a quote from the chief scientist in Australia, Dr. Alan Finkel. If the world was to reduce its carbon emissions by 1.3%, what impact would that make on the changing climate of the world? And his response was that the impact will be virtually nothing. 1.3% is the carbon emissions of Australia. It would make no difference. Utterly none. But I would hazard a guess, reduction in the quality of life. All this rubbish, maybe that's why wages aren't going up. Maybe that's why cost of living is going up. Think about it. Everyone's saying, oh, it's the privatization of the energy grid. That's why power is so expensive. No, it's the insistence that a certain percentage of power was produced by sustainable energy. That's why you've got additional costs. And all the subsidies provided to these people putting panels on their houses should have been left to the free market. Now that industry is also getting destroyed in Victoria. The strike will culminate in New York when Greta, who has been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for her climate activism, will spearhead a rally at the United Nations headquarters. Daniel P., a Sydney High School student, had a blunt message for politicians, such as Australian Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, who told Parliament on Thursday that students should stay in class. Well, yeah, I mean, this is the problem. You're going to get people that'll just fail. World leaders from everywhere, although they're probably learning more skills organizing these type of things, to be honest. World leaders from everywhere are telling us that students need to be at school doing work, she said, wearing anti-call earrings. I'd like to see them at their parliament doing their jobs for once. The UN summit next week brings together world leaders to discuss climate change migration strategies, such as transitioning to renewable energy sources from fossil fuels. Okay, so that's going to be a reduction in your quality of life. And there's other, there's videos now where people are talking about having to eat bugs for food. They want to put taxes on your meat. It's all about reducing your quality of life and then getting the state bigger and bigger, less freedoms. And it's religious. It's a cultish mentality, guys. You can't go against the grain. It's heresy. And it's working its way into business. It's working its way into education. It's very dangerous. The issue is vital to low-lying Pacific Islanders who have repeatedly asked wealthier nations to do more to prevent rising sea levels. Okay, yeah, sure. As Friday's day of action got underway across scattered Pacific Island communities, students holding placards in Kiribati chanted, "We're not striking, we're fighting." Sure you are. Children in the Solomon Islands rallied on the shorelines wearing traditional grass skirts and carrying wooden shields. Hours later in Thailand, more than 200 young people stormed the Environment Ministry and dropped to the ground feigning death. This is what will happen if we don't stop climate change now, said 21-year-old strike organizer. I'm not even going to try and pronounce your name. In Europe, German Chancellor Angela Merkel unveiled a new major climate protection package thrashed out by parties in her coalition in all-night talks. I think Germany has a whole lot of other social issues that are going on there. Meanwhile, on the streets of the capital, crowds gathered at Brandenburg Gate, where 3 activists stood on blocks of ice beneath mock gallows. A lot of people support our movement, but we want to go a step further because politicians decide on our future, said Jankin Oswald, the German spokesperson for Fridays for Future. The school strike movement started by Greta in Sweden last year. We urgently demand that something happens. In India's financial capital, Mumbai, battered this year by heavier than usual monsoon that caused flooding. Children from at least 10 schools joined throughout the day. So here we go. Here's the problem. Here's their problem. They're suffering from confirmation bias. They are falsely attributing weather patterns to as punishment for their sins against Greta and climate change. Okay, their sins of using man-made product have brought upon the vengeful act of the climate change god. Apollo. No, not Apollo. Who's the god of the sea? Oh, bloody hell, I can't even remember him. But you know who I mean. Trident. No, that's his thing. I'll remember it after I finish recording. He's the vengeful of the gods is causing rain and bushfire. So you need to appease. You need to get bigger government. Yeah. So by early Friday, across Europe, Middle East, Africa, crowds had gathered in many cities: London, Paris, Brazil, Berlin, yada, yada, yada. And they're skipping lessons. Climate change is real and it's coming for us. It doesn't matter who you are, what you do. Whether you're rich or poor, this thing is real. It does not isolate. Okay. Guys, we don't have the technology to accurately predict the weather in 100 years' time. We don't even know what technology will exist in the next 50 years' time. All of the actions you are doing could actually hamper humanity's ability to develop technology to address these issues. You'll probably have a net negative impact on addressing climate change by protesting and by pulling us back to primitive tech. Okay? A windmill with some modern magnets in it is not that advanced. Well, sure it is, but it's not that reliable. So this is coming from another thing. This is an article from Newsweek. Psychologists warn parents, climate change alarmists, against causing eco-anxiety in children. And that is what we're seeing here. We have eco-anxiety in children. So let's have a look. Psychologists warn parents and guardians about being climate change alarmists, noting an increasing number of children who are being treated for eco-anxiety. Researchers at the University of Bath and members of the Climate Psychology Alliance in the United Kingdom say children are commonly being subjected to a barrage of concerns about the future of the planet and environmental doom. Psychologists speaking with The Telegraph this week said a rising number of kids and young adults are being treated with psychiatric drugs in order to reduce the emotional stress and exhaustion caused by eco-anxiety, or a fervent fear that humans will go extinct as a result of their own pollution and damage to the environment. So if you know someone who's suffering from that, I would strongly suggest to do some study into Stoicism, guys. Because then you don't worry at all anymore. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But CPA members said they don't want the rising eco-anxiety social phenomenon in children to be classified as a mental illness because it is a rational fear unlike the causes behind most standard anxiety issues. Oh, why? No, it's not. Maybe it should. This is a good idea. That's it. This is the part. This is what we need to lobby for. We need to lobby for eco-anxiety to be considered a mental illness. That's how we can attack this cult. That's it. Eco-anxiety is a mental illness. Fantastic. I'm going to break this one in a separate video as well, I think, just to get it out there. Caroline Hickman, a University of Bath teaching fellow and CPA executive, told The Telegraph Sunday, the symptoms are the same as clinical anxiety. Well, then it is clinical anxiety. It is. The only reason you think it's a rational fear is because you don't have an understanding of what's going on. The feelings are the same, but the cause is different. The feeling is of environmental doom, that we're all going to die. So what? It's how's it different? So hang on, let me look up clinical anxiety. Clinical anxiety. I'm just getting a whole lot of beyond blue stuff. Okay, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Hickman added that parents, unlike global political leaders, should discuss global warming and the effects of man-made climate change with their children. But she warned against portraying the issues as though they were dooming mankind. Well, yeah, I discuss it with my children. I say it's something not to be worried about in the slightest. It's all blown out of proportion. People have cognitive bias. They're indoctrinated into this cult. They are harassed and bullied if they question the status quo or their holy assumptions. The scientists who ascribe to this are treated as the priestly class of this religious organization, and that you need to be cynical. Whenever there is a mob of people yelling at you saying you should not do that because of this, question it. Hickman cautioned that when children and young adults are told climate change will end humans, kids approach mental health experts asking questions such as, what's the point of going to university? What's the point of doing my exams? Yes, yeah, well, this is what you're causing, guys. This is why people are skipping classes and proudly, saying, oh, all hope is lost. We need to act. We need to act. This is where it's dangerous. It is very dangerous. So yeah, no, it's a mental illness. Eco-anxiety, mental illness. That I'm going to use that from now on. We need to popularize this. So all these protests show that we need to have more funding for mental illness. Parents need to find some words to talk about this that is age appropriate, not terrifying, she continued. You need to separate what is fact from what is unknown. Tell them some species are going extinct and some humans are being harmed, but don't say we're all going to die because that isn't true. Yeah, but other species are evolving. There's now stuff that's eating the plastic in the oceans, guys. Psychoanalytical psychotherapist and Climate Psychology Alliance co-founder Andrin Tar has appeared in several videos informing educators, parents and others on facing difficult truths about climate change and ecological crisis. Yes, that a lot of the basis is unwarranted, that a lot of the concern isn't realistic. I bet you that's not what he's talking about. The CPA offers a four-stage recommendation on how parents should address climate change concerns with the children. The first step involves introducing known facts about the issues and asking for their response before scarring them with any acknowledgement that human extinction is the ultimate outcome. The final step is providing children with day-to-day tangible steps to cut back on greenhouse gases and pollutions. The CPA suggests discussions of reducing non-renewable wastes, wiser choices in food, and cutting energy consumption around the house. This is indoctrination. This is indoctrination of children. And we're seeing what's happening over here now. You're not allowing them to be critical thinkers. You're not allowing them to challenge what's being put before them. This is scary. This worries me more than anything. Bloody hell. This is dangerous. In 2007, the American Psychological Association issued a report analyzing climate grief. And there is a growing body of research into how the tangible effects of climate change combined with increasing global calls to action are affecting humans' sense of humanity and self. The increasing visibility of climate change effects. No, that is a cognitive bias there. You're suffering from confirmation bias. That is not, you can't make that claim. The increasing visibility of climate change effects. No, you can't make that claim. That's not provable. The researchers wrote is producing feelings of depression, anxiety, and helplessness in the face of potential extinction. I'd say the increasing visibility of phenomenon that is attributed to climate change that's what you should write, is attributed in there. Okay? Because we've got our politicians now attributing the bushfires in Queensland to climate change. This is utterly ludicrous. Utterly ludicrous. Okay? Australia is a bushfire nation. We've got plants that have evolved to take benefit of bushfire. Okay? That's kind of happened over a slightly longer period than humans have been burning stuff. So much of the cited research seeks to mitigate the toll of emotional exhaustion on those concerned with climate change. So guys, I've just been invaded by my little 2-year-old who I think is suffering from lack of chocolate anxiety and is insisting I get her some. We'll see. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments about all of this. How are you addressing this with your children? Or do you have a pesky teenager that's marching out on these protests and just knows everything already and can't be given a bit of perspective? Like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Take care.